this, the next two sessions, let me first focus on this session. In this session, what we're going to do is we're kind of formally coming to the end of the didactic part of neuroscience, where we covered quite a bit in Enrich, and there have been a few things which we have covered in Excel. All the first 5 topics we have covered in Excel. We will have some more which will be done in Embody, but they will be more, how do you put it, more practical applications and how to apply it on oneself. In terms of, we have discussed various tools. I'll quickly review some of the tools which we have discussed. Mindfulness is something which sort of integrates all of them. And therefore, it's a way of life more than it being a specific standalone tool. It is also a specific standalone tool. And like Lali Aunty was saying earlier, so this particular session, I didn't want to do this. It will be Usha Aunty who will do it, who is an expert on that particular subject. And we will not have a case today. I will take for the first 10 minutes. That will be followed by around 50 minutes by Usha Aunty and followed by Q&A. And that's all we will have for this particular session. All right, let's get started. The reason we keep making the slide again and again, or repeatedly, let's put it that way, is because we want to get it into ourselves, saying that excellence is simply not about intelligence. It's not about an attitude. It's not about any of those things. It is about doing something repeatedly. As we know, in the Teachers as Neurosculptors, there are 3 parts. The first one, we have done the knowing. Excel, our focus during the 6 months. Leave aside the 90 minutes which we spend every second Saturday. That's every alternate Saturday, that's fine. But during the 6-month period, and hopefully beyond that, the idea is to be practicing certain things, which is why we have those worksheets and those tools which Lali Aunty has been putting together. And as we practice during the 6 months of Excel, one hopes when we come to embody, we are a bit of what we have learned, and these have gone deeper into us, that it becomes a natural self itself. And what are those things? So the starting point of this is, why do we need to understand the brain? The reason is, understanding our brain simply means we understand ourselves. It gives us a greater and a better way to understand ourselves, a greater level of self-awareness, and it's empowering as well. And how do we use some of these tools? We use some of these tools by taking advantage of something which is there in nature called neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity simply means that if you are able to actively, consciously change our thoughts, we can change our brain. If we change our feelings, we can change our brain. And of course, if we are able to change our behavior and our actions, then it leads to a change in the brain itself. And this is not a metaphorical way of saying you change your brain. It's a physical way, a literal way, an actual way in which the brain remolds itself, and new neural pathways are created to the extent that our new thoughts cannot travel in the old path because they're being sealed off in our brain. Okay. Now, what are the tools which we talked about? The tools we have talked about, I put the concept and right next to that what the tools are. The first one is where we said there is no universality as far as belief systems are concerned. It is not necessary that what I think is right is the same as what everybody thinks should be right, and what somebody else thinks is right should be what I think is right. It's not necessary. Just to understand and accept the fact that different people can believe in different things which are right and wrong is about acceptance of a belief system. So the simple antidote when we come across people with a different belief system is to be able to find out at least one good thing in that particular person. And obviously, if it's a routine relationship or a periodic relationship which happens every day, then try and find more and more good things in a person. The second one was perception, where it's really about how do we change the way we look at things. Perception when it comes to interactions, perceptions when we are looking at a situation which is outside of us. How do we perceive it? The perception comes from our belief systems. So therefore, one way to change our belief system is to change our perception itself, which is you change the way you look at things, the things we look at change. They don't actually change, but we are able to get a different perspective to the whole thing. And the third one, we won't spend any time here because the whole session is on mindfulness. Then automatic negative thoughts. The antidote or the tool for automatic negative thoughts is for us to be able to write whenever we get a negative thought. Okay. When we get a negative thought, we can write it down. And then at a later point in time, we can subject it to a true or false test. Because we know that while thoughts are real, negative thoughts are real, most of them are false. And therefore, by subjecting it to a true or false test, we will have an ability to now come back. The brain will be able to slowly start telling itself that these thoughts which I'm thinking of are just negative thoughts and they anyway turn out to be false. And those kinds of thoughts start dropping off. So the process of active cognition, the process of metacognition, the process of journaling is one of the main antidotes or tools when it comes to ants. The other thing about ants is to counterbalance. When we have negativity, there's plenty we need to be thankful for. There's plenty of things, starting with just having two limbs and two legs and two hands and a proper eyesight and everything. There's plenty to be thankful for. Thankful for the 3 square meals we are getting and for the roof which is over our head. Thankful for the thing that we are blessed with, a reasonable amount of money which we can take care of ourselves, blessed with good health and so on. There's plenty to be thankful of, but then we take all of those for granted, in which case, if we have taken all that for granted, then the negativity is the one which we think is our life. So one way to counterbalance the negativity, one is to actively, dynamically reduce the negativity, which is in terms of journaling and metacognition. And the second one is to be having a degree of attitude of gratitude. So having that gratitude for simple things in our life and lots of things which we are blessed with. And as we keep digging, we'll realize more and more things as to why we should be so thankful for what we have in our lives. And one of the more difficult ants and something which is extremely harmful are two ants which are blaming and defending. Now, blaming is an inability to take accountability for our actions. Okay, when things go wrong, we have to try and find out it went wrong because of, and that because of is not me usually. Or if you're still not able to find somebody, we have to defend the actions. Right? So those are two really terrible ants, which is blaming and defending and taking accountability, saying that no matter what happens, okay, I'm going to say I'm responsible for it. I'm going to at least tell myself I'm responsible for it. Taking accountability is an antidote for ants. Then to realize our potential is about finding our flow, finding our purpose, and finding our ikigai, which is the common space in which all those 4 things meet. You know, what we are good at, what the world needs. We know the gig there. Then we spend some time in terms of what do we do with time management. While we didn't want to go into specific tips and tricks in terms of time management, there are plenty of books which are written on it. All we wanted to say were 2 things. One is don't do things you don't want to do. And to identify that is a knack by itself. Okay, it's a skill by itself. Okay, knowing what is important and what is unimportant is a skill which takes time to develop. And once we have that, not doing something we should not be doing itself is a great time manager. The second thing, whenever we realize that we are procrastinating things and we are saying, I'm not doing it because I don't have time, just replace that in your head of saying, instead of saying, I don't have time, just replace it by saying, it is not my priority to be doing things, doing this particular thing. Then stress, which is really our choice. So we have to be clear in terms of our action acceptance choices. Do I need to get stressed about something? Do I need to get anxious about something? If I really can't do anything by way of action, there is nothing to be stressed about in that. And if there is something which I can do by way of action, then I should act on it rather than getting anxious about it. So there are ways in which one can manage stress. Easier said than done. I'm not trying to make it as if it's all easy. That's why we have the 6 months when we want to practice each one of these things. And the last couple of things are, one, in the current environment where we have a tremendous propagation of polarized thinking, it is important to reclaim the central position. And one of the ways to reclaim a central position is to be able to think for ourselves. Because we know as individuals, we are likely to be reasonable and therefore we can hold. So if you're able to figure out a way of seeing good in most things and most people, then chances are we'll be able to recapture the center's position. And to be able to recapture that, one needs to reclaim that critical thinking. Stephen Covey said the most important leadership trait is our ability to trust and being trustworthy, right? So always lead with trust. Okay, there's a big story behind leading with trust on Prisoner's Dilemma story. We'll come to that at some other time. Simple thing is, in any situation in an interpersonal relationship, always lead with trust, which means that you believe what the other person is saying. That's it. Start with believing what the other person is saying, and then get started with the whole relationship. Get started with every transaction with a relationship. The one thing which people can pick up, particularly children, given that we are school heads, particularly children can pick up, is hypocrisy and phoneism. Being phony, being a phony or being hypocritical is something which youngsters can pick up just like that. So authenticity is the easiest thing to practice, and in some ways is the toughest one, because our a make-believe image we have created for ourselves will shatter if you're authentic. Try and shatter that as quickly as we can so that we can just simply be ourselves and be authentic. Last couple of tips are physical activity, nutrition, sleep hygiene, laughter, and just having fun in any activity which we do. All of these are important for the physical body because there is a great amount of connection between the physical body and our mental body. And therefore, if you're not taking care of our physical body in terms of nutrition, exercise, and sleep hygiene, and just having fun when we are doing things, then any amount of mental process will not help. And if you take care of only this and we don't take care of some of the earlier things which we talked about, again, it will have suboptimal results. All right. So with that, I will stop sharing and I will hand it over to Shanti, who will take it over from here. Auntie, all yours.
Okay. All right. You can see and hear me, right, Ramesh? Using the same.
Yep.
Good. Yeah. This particular topic, mindfulness, it's extremely important. It's an important tool, as you will see. But how can we make it as a way of life? And why should we make it a way of life? That is the question. Ramesh just talked about neuroplasticity, and he said, very simply, what neuroplasticity means. Like if we change our thoughts, we change our brain. If we change our feelings, we change our brain. If we change our memories, we change our brain. If we change our perception, we change our brain. If we change our belief system, we change our brain. All of this happens, a change in the brain doesn't have to be really long lasting. For the structural, long-lasting changes of the brain to occur, all these changes in thoughts, feelings, memories, belief system, perception, all of this or each one of these has to result in change in our experience, change in our actions, change in our behavior. Then only there will be long-lasting changes. Now you see why we've said it's a journey from a tool to a way of life. We can use mindfulness as a tool, just like many other tools that we have already talked about, and we're going to keep giving you more and more tools. Yes, once in a while or at that time, there will be some changes, but for us to have long-lasting changes in the structure of the brain so that it will result in change in our life itself, if we can make mindfulness as a way of life, that is going to be it. Because if we have to choose one tool that will cover everything what Ramesh has been talking about, both in the enrich and now in the Excel session, and then and the third part is embody. If we can pick one, this has to be it. That doesn't mean we can ignore everything else. What I'm trying to say is, if you pick this one, everything else will be all comprising. It will comprise of all the other techniques. You will see as we go along in this series, not just with this talk, Ramesh will be able to connect how every other tool will naturally come under if we make mindfulness as a way of life. If we make it as a tool, that's great. We have to start it as a tool. But if we make it as a way of life, that is going to be it. But if I have to say one little extra thing for this mindfulness, if we are interested in going a little bit deeper in our lives, not just in our career, but in our life itself, at some stage or even now, trying to understand science through spirituality or spirituality through science. In other words, if we need to bring about both science and spirituality, this can happen when we make mindfulness as a way of life. And this can only happen if we can make mindfulness as a way of life. When we do that, it is going to be as simple. It is very simple, but not easy. Just like every other tool Ramesh is saying and giving it to you, most of these tools are very, very simple, but not easy. If we can keep this in mind, then let us take out that easy from our dictionary and then focus on the simple aspect, and then we will be fine. So what does this being mindful is all about? As I already said, this is a combination of science and spirituality. If we make it as a way of life, it can be a confluence of understanding level. At least we can be able to understand mindfulness both from a scientific perspective and from the spiritual perspective, which also means it's both a tool and we can make it as a path itself. We all know this, that all things, anything that we do under the sun, we know that it is created twice. The first time around, it is mental creation, or the very first creation is mental creation. And the second creation is the physical aspect of it. Let us see, what do I mean by that? You all know this. Let me try and connect this to mindfulness. So when we do the very first step, the mental creation, the very first creation, everything we think, we plan out, we analyze, we think, we feel everything in our heads. And while we do that, while we have to plan ahead, we also learn from the previous experience, learn from our past, think about the future, plan ahead. So every everything happens at the level of thought. So many a times we keep going back and forth between our past, learning from the past and then thinking about doing it in the future. What we need to be aware of, that we should not get stuck in this phase. We will see what happens when we just get stuck at this phase. So when we think, when we feel about what we want to do in our mind, then automatically our self-awareness increases. Extremely important aspect of human mind. It's one of the qualities, one of the powers, you can say, that self-awareness, because this self-awareness is what makes us truly human and separates us from the rest of the animal kingdom. So this very first creation, when we think about things that we want to do, feel about it, our self-awareness increases. So when we go into the next phase of physical or second creation, what happens? Then all those thoughts, all the thinking, all the feelings, they have to be followed by actions. If they are not followed by actions, this is what I meant by, we will get stuck at the very first stage. And when we get stuck at the very first stage, just thinking, analyzing, feeling, but not be able to put into action, then actually our anxiety increases. We don't think about anxiety in this way, but our anxiety increases when we are only at the thinking, feeling, planning, obsessing about it in a very good way. The anxiety increases. So especially for people who are creative, especially for people who are leading, like all of you, if you get anxious, think about it for yourself. Is it because I have so many ideas and plans, but I'm not able to put everything into practice? Just saying that will enough. You will be able to realize, maybe I'm stuck. Maybe I have so many ideas, but only one or two will work. Then we will be able to accept that only one or two ideas will work, and then we go along. So for that second step, second creation, the physical act of all our ideas is so important that we need to be aware that we should not and cannot get stuck at that very first phase. So it is all about action, action, and action. Without action, there won't be long-lasting changes in the brain. So there won't be long-lasting changes in our lives. Extremely a different way of looking at things when you look at it this way. So if it's all about actions, when do we do those actions? When do we put that second creation, the physical creation, into being? That can only happen in the present moment. Anything that we do, we have talked about this before, anything that we have to do, it can only happen in the present moment. Actually, not even just actions, even our thoughts can only happen in the present moment. If you really think about it, we can think about the past, we can think about the future, but even the thinking can only happen in the present moment. Very, very profound. Whether thinking or action, anything and everything can only happen in the present moment. So this present moment really, really, really matters. So if another way of looking at this is, truly speaking, whether we look at it from a scientific perspective or from a spiritual perspective, truly speaking, all we have is this present moment. So all we need to do is to take care of this moment. So all we need to do is to take care of just one moment at a time. Very simple, but extremely difficult to practice. But I can assure you, only when we make it, start it as a tool, we all start it as a tool. But once we are convinced beyond doubt, more even before practicing, once we are convinced beyond doubt, intellectual conviction is extremely important. Once we are convinced beyond doubt that all we have is this present moment, that is when it becomes so profound and it becomes a way of life without our knowledge. At least that is what happened to me. Without my knowledge, all of these statements, all we have is now, everything became so much deeper. And that intellectual conviction without any doubt is what helps. This is so important. If anybody has a doubt regarding this, I will pause for 15 seconds. Please ask even before I even start off mindfulness, because this concept of all we have is now is so important. Ramesh, we will see if there are any questions in the chat, we will take up. Even if it takes the rest of the time, it is still fine. This concept, this principle, this tattva is so important. We need to be convinced beyond any doubt. This intellectual conviction is important.
Usha ma'am.
Yes, Lalita.
Usha ma'am, all of us know, at least I am talking personally for myself, all we have is now. Still, if I'm not able to give that 100% now, and I will say, okay, I will do it later. I can only do this now. If I'm sitting here, I can only listen, I can only absorb. But somewhere, if it's working in my mind, that I can also read or watch video, or I can make note of some points. Why does this kind of replacement of thought process come?
I'll give you a quick answer, and the long answer you will see by the end of this session. The quick answer, Lalita, that was also for me, but couple of decades back. We get attracted to many new ideas, especially about multitasking. And especially as women, we do so much of multitasking. That is where we become so good at things that it is the concept of multitasking is what makes us, yes, I'm doing right away, something else comes up and then we want to jot it down. It is, in my personal opinion, because we held that concept of multitasking so much that we can do so many things. We especially working women professionals, we literally, with all humility, I'm saying, we're like super women trying to do many things. I truly feel this is the reason. But as you go along to see what mindfulness is, then we know all these are not truly distractions for us, what you just described. Yes, I'm listening, but I right away think about something else, I write it down. That multitasking, at least for people who are here, these are not distractions. But we need to make that shift from that multitasking to really be in the flow, really be focusing. That is why many a times that Pomodoro technique really is really handy and helps, the Pomodoro technique. And especially for people like us where we have to do multitasking. But even when we do multitasking, if we can understand, we're only doing that at one moment, at least consciously. We might be doing other things at an automatic plane, like while driving, we are thinking something else conscious. I'm not talking about that. We all do that. That is not a distraction many of the times for people like us, but consciously we can only think one thing at a time. This again, we need to be convinced. Great question, Lalita.
Can I ask a quick question, Auntie?
Sure.
I understand and appreciate all we have as now. Just like when we are reading a book, what happens is we don't read every alphabet and stitch it together as a word and then as a sentence. We just look at it and the sentence goes inside us in many ways. So similarly, while if I can make a comparison and say that the now is like the alphabet of a period of time in which I am in, it's so difficult to focus on the alphabet, particularly when I know the word. If I were to read Russian, then I will probably read it as alphabets, where it looks like inverted V and inverted B and everything else. I might read it like that because I don't know how to read Russian. But if it's English, it's so difficult for me to focus on the alphabet unless that's why proofreading fails a lot of times. And what happens in this situation is while intellectual appreciation is there, the practice is where it starts getting into a bit of a jam. Not so much intellectually we understand that. It's a bit like intellectually, in many ways, it's almost like saying all big numbers are composed of ones, right? I mean, if you take 100, it's got 100 ones in it, or you take 7,300, it's got 7,300 ones in it. We understand that intellectually, but where it becomes a problem is really we read sentences rather than as alphabet. And how do we retrain ourselves to read like a child, which is like an alphabet by alphabet?
Again, a great question again, Ramesh. I'm going to answer very shortly and indirectly, but this is where the session is. I'm just laying the foundation for why we need to be mindful and how to be mindful. We're going to get into that. And then we're going to look at mindfulness from 3 different angles. And then we can again look at how to use this mindfulness while we are studying, while we are playing tennis, while we are conversing with our loved one. So each one, there are different definitions for mindfulness that Yogakshema has come about to be able to apply in different situations. So being mindful is such a broad term. You will only see a particular definition, as you will see right now. But we at Yogakshema has gone so deep and looked at mindfulness from various different angles. Even that you won't be able to get everything, but we will be able to touch the tip of the iceberg. In other words, with respect to interpersonal relationships, what does this mindfulness mean about? Not just being in the present moment, and then what? So when we go through those 3 ways of looking at mindfulness, and then maybe first we started off just one way of looking at it. I'm trying to understand mindfulness from many different angles, scenarios, situations, under different cases. And then we need to come up with our own practical definition of mindfulness too. So your question will be answered hopefully by the end as I go through those 3 ways of looking at mindfulness, Ramesh. Okay. Again, a great question.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Usha,
yeah.
Looking at the screen, I just want to say it is interesting. I can also read it as all we have is you. Take care of the moment.
Yeah, that is so true. And that reminds me of Ubuntu.
Yeah. Anyhow, I need a little more on this Pomodoro. I have not heard it before, what it means.
I will leave it to Ramesh to cover this during the management talks. I'm not sure whether you're covering it or not. I will request Ramesh to cover this Pomodoro technique.
Yeah.
But I will probably just say, and very interesting aspect of Pomodoro is a special variety of tomato.
It's just tomato.
Yeah.
Golden.
Yeah. Pomodoro is just tomato.
Just a tomato.
Yeah, just tomato in Italian. They say 20 minutes you do something. I'll just quickly answer it. So whenever you want to do a long activity, do it for 20 minutes and take a 2-minute break.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the next 20 minutes, immerse yourself.
Yes, sir.
It looks like the 20 minutes is the attention span, time for attention span.
Yeah, to be highly focused, to be in the flow.
Something like that, yeah.
To help us lessen the distraction. And we tried this in one of the corporate levels. And to make it fun, we asked the managers to bring a tomato from home, to keep it on the table, to remind themselves of that. And then there was a lot of fun with that tool. Anyway, anybody else?
Thank you, Usha and Ramesh.
Okay, let me go forward. This reminds me of what Vivekananda talked about. How do we take care of this present moment, right? We all know this. This is one of the popular sayings of Vivekananda. He says, what we are today is because of our past actions. So whatever we wish to be in the future definitely will depend on the present actions. And he says, so you have to know how to act. So I say, it's not just about how to act, why to act, and when to act. Now we know when to act is very easy because we have to act in the now. And why? Why do we have to act in the now? Because now is the only thing that we have. Then how to act, that is what we're going to focus now. Because again, it's so important that all we have is now. And let us see how we are going to act in the present moment. One of the ways is we need to learn to master this present moment, only one moment. This is where in Sanskrit they say this is not mind training, not mind control, but if we know how to master this moment, it is called Mano Jayaha. Beautiful word. Not mind control, which is Mano Nigraha. It is not Mano Nigraha, but Mano Jaya, if we can master this moment. And that is what we're going to learn, how to master this moment. And that is through mindfulness. It's the easiest way to master the moment is through being mindful. And this first definition of mindful, which John Kabat-Zinn started this definition, which is very simple. This you will get on the net. Wherever you say mindfulness, this is the definition that you get. It is nothing but bringing one's complete attention to the present experience on a moment to moment basis in a non-judgmental way. If I have to simplify this definition and look at it as just 3 things that you need to remember, if I say mindfulness through this definition, it is about being in the present moment, in the now, here and now, now and here, paying attention to the fullest extent, that is being focused, concentration. This is extremely important. Any educational institution that I go to, I have been talking about this. Even as simple as changing our language with our students. What do we usually tell our students? Focus, concentrate, focus, learn to concentrate. If we can change the term to being mindful, see how powerful it would be. Paying attention, concentration is one aspect of mindfulness. being in the present moment, both body and mind together in the present moment. Here in the now, the body will be here, mind will be elsewhere, focusing on something else. You can see when it happens with the students. And in a non-judgmental way. What do I mean by non-judgmental way? I'll just take the example of, again, students. It will be easier to understand. When the students study for exams, let us say their 12th grade or 10th grade exams, and then some of the students will be thinking, oh my goodness, I'm glad I don't have to study math anymore because I'm going to go into humanities. Or somebody else will be saying, I'm so glad I don't have to study English anymore because I'm going to take commerce. Whatever subject they don't like, that is what the usual thing the kids think for themselves while studying for exams. That is being judgmental. Can we study just focusing, trying to enjoy, even if we cannot enjoy, be in a neutral way, even if we teach that to our kids, make them understand, that itself will help increase their memory power a whole lot more. Reduce their anxiety about that subject a whole lot more. Can we as school leaders try and change, or along with concentration and focus, start using the terminology? Let us be mindful. Let us be mindful rather than you focus, you concentrate. Can we start saying, let us be mindful, let us be mindful? If we can make this as a practice from those at that age, it will become a lot easier for them later. So both body and mind being together in the present moment is what mindful is all about. And that can only happen here and now and here. And this, in a different way, is what we call that as flow. Totally immersed in what we are doing. So this is the first way of looking at mindfulness. We will set this aside, and then let us go and look at the second way of definition or looking at mindfulness. What does this mean? I think it's Einstein who said, if you keep doing the same things over and over again and expect different results, and we know what it is called, it's called insanity, right? So we are so used to doing the same old thing again and again and again. If it is giving great results, stick to that because you have perfected the technique. Many a times, we're not even getting great results, but we're so used to that. And we are okay with whatever is happening. We just accept it. If we want to do something better, if we are expecting even a little bit better, which we usually do, most of us, then at least little bit changes we need to do in the way we are looking at things, the way we are feeling at things, the way we are doing certain actions. That is what it means by changing our perspective. What do I mean by that? See, yes, we know this. From one angle it is 6 and the other angle it is 9. I like that one. What they say is, just because you are right does not mean I am wrong. If we can understand this, even if we cannot change our perspective, think both are right. But if we have to work towards the same cause, sometimes we have to come together and change our perspective. Otherwise, even if somebody does not change that perspective and also think maybe it is a different way, eventually, if we have this attitude, if we have this perspective as leaders, And then the reason that perspective is important, because if we truly believe in this, the other person is also right. It's not that she is wrong, but it is not helping to work together to the common cause. If we truly believe this as principals and school leaders, the way we behave with that teacher, the way we talk to the teacher or a student, whoever that might be, our colleague, will be very different. This is what is very important. Rather than saying, blaming, when we start blaming the situation or the person, the way we look at the situation is so very different. Rather than, then we will never ever be able to learn. This is where it leads to being highly empathetic and compassionate and also kind. And this is what helps us to love the work that we do. It will be tough. At least we will enjoy the work that we do. This is a different way of looking at mindfulness itself. Another, going forward in the same definition of why do we have to change our perspective? Another definition would be, it is a way of seeing things, different people and various situations and circumstances as though we are looking at it for the very first time. This aspect is extremely tough. And especially when it comes to interpersonal relationships, especially when it comes to our loved ones. Maybe we can do it with the colleagues, but to be doing this at home with our family members, what I have seen is this is the hardest way of doing it. But we need to know this and try to work towards it. And I also like this way of looking at it, because it says in mindfulness, when we understand mindfulness at a deeper level, it says you can't make the same mistake twice. The first time around, it's a true, genuine mistake. The second time when we make the same mistake, it's not a mistake anymore. It is a choice we have made. If it is not even a choice that we have made, then it has already become a habit. When we see the errors and the mistakes with our colleagues, with the students, can we make them understand mindfulness through this definition, through this way of looking at it? It's okay. You're only making the same mistake again and again because you're not thinking about it. That means it has already made a habit. Before you make that mistake, try to see, can you make it as a conscious choice? If we still make that mistake as a conscious choice, then we have to pat ourselves on the back, because then we know we are making a mistake. There has to be a real reason for it. So it is okay. Extremely important, different ways of looking at mindfulness. So this is the second way of looking at mindfulness. The third way of looking at mindfulness itself is, we know we all have our own favorite things to do and not so favorite things to be doing. In other words, we know we have to do certain things, but we also know we want to do other things. And there is a dilemma, there is a clash. And especially, I'll give you an example, when we know we need to be doing our physical activity or increasing our physical activity, doing our exercises on a regular basis, we know that we have to do that. But we would rather do something else at that time, play with our kids or watch our favorite TED Talk at that time, rather than doing the exercises. So there is a clear divide right now for most of us between what we want to do and what we have to do. Mindfulness is all about dissolving that divide, dissolving that barrier between what we want to do and what we have to do. If it has to be done, it has to be done. Whatever it takes to do, accomplish the task. Even if it, sometimes we have done all of this, mind you, as leaders, we have all done this without knowing, but we don't take credit. We think we are sacrificing, or we have changed our personality and we feel bad about it, or we don't want to change our nature, so we won't do that. But if we look at it this way, what is the cause that I'm working for? Then want to do, have to do, has to dissolve. And if it comes to, if I need to change myself a bit, we need to be willingly and happily doing that rather than as a sacrifice. And especially when we have to burn the candle at both ends, which many of the times you all would do that in a willing manner so that it will empower you rather than feeling low about it. Yes, physically you might be tired. That's very easy to take care of. But if we look at that in a mindful way, especially at a mental level, it should put us in a very high. So whatever we need to change, whatever we need to do to work toward the cause, if we work in a mindful way, that is what it is all about. So in other words, it's also a way of facing the reality. But we want the reality the way we want it to be, that will suit our convenience, that will suit our personality. But when we are working with the team, truly working in a mindful way, all of that has to drop off. We need to face the reality, accept the reality as it is. And we want to steer the whole team, steer the whole group, everybody in a particular way. Just thinking to be mindful, it will take us to a different high altogether. And when we start practicing this, it truly puts us in a very mentally high level. And that gives us so much physical strength to be doing so much. And it will give us so much energy to be doing so many things. And even at the end of the day, this is one of the things I talk about in time management. How do we know we are managing the time properly? At the end of the day, if you still have energy to do the job that you don't feel like doing, or to do the job that you love the most, like playing with your kid, or spending 10 more extra minutes with your spouse, then you know you're being mindful throughout the day. That should be our yardstick to see, do we have that extra energy at the end of the day? So when we try and incorporate these, especially this definition, whatever challenges that come about, first we say, what? One more deadline or one more project on the table? One more teacher left? We would be saying this, what? One more thing, I won't be able to handle it? From that, from what, it automatically goes to, so what? Let it happen, let it come. We'll be able to face this together as a team, not alone. Only when we truly believe this, we will be able to take the whole team forward. Only when we practice this, not just as a tool, but as a way of life. Most of us practice this as a tool. Until and unless we make it as a way of life, I don't want to make this strong statement, but many a times I will make it, and then it will be easier to understand. We won't be true leaders if we don't make it as a way of life. Or if I have to put it in a more positive way, to be true leaders is a way to make mindfulness as a way of life. So, with those definitions and various ways of looking at mindfulness, I just would like to conclude. How do we make this as a way of life? I've said all of this, but we also have to be careful. Mindfulness is not a panacea for everything. There is no silver bullet. There is no magic pill. Mindfulness is not a magic pill. We have to be careful even with this. We need to know what we are getting to. What do I mean by mindfulness is not a panacea? Yeah, it's not a silver bullet to every problem. It's just the way we look at things. Even when we practice mindfulness, we will still experience difficult emotions, and there will be mental chatter. Should I not? Should I be doing this? Should I not be doing that? All of that mental chatter, not be able, it will happen. However, when we practice this tool, make it as a way of life, we can change our relationship with our own emotions, with our own feelings, with our own thoughts, and with our own negative self-talk. And when we are really mindful, we don't have to believe every thought we get, because we know thoughts are real, but all thoughts are not true. And even if we get a negative thought or a negative emotion or a feeling, we don't need to get knocked down by those emotions like we used to. So don't think like if you practice mindfulness, everything will vanish. These things will come, but the way we will start looking at it will be very, very different. And I like this quote. I love this quote by Thich Nhat Hanh. He's a great Zen master. The best way to take care of the future is to take care of the present moment. So simple. We know all of this. But when it comes from people like that who have practiced this throughout their life, it has so much more weight. And these are the things that will inspire us a whole lot more to be able to follow the same. So that present moment, how are we looking at this present moment right now? Most of us, most of the time, we look at this present moment with a binary format. Right or wrong, black or white, like the Newtonian principle, you know, just only two choices is what we have. And not only that, and lot of times we are on the autopilot mode with the present moment. However, when we are mindful, what does that mean is, yes, as I said, we will get certain challenges, certain triggers, certain stimuli. Now, the way we know is we react to that. But when we start practicing mindfulness over a period of time, what happens? Without mindfulness, there is a trigger, there is a stimulus, and we react. Whereas with mindfulness, yes, it's the same trigger, it's the same people at home, same colleagues at work, same challenges. But when we are mindful, we will see plenty of choices, not just two, not looking at things in a binary format. Just like in the picture, we see many different things, not just two things, like with 6 or 9, only two things. Whereas here in the picture, there are many different ways of looking at it. So there are multiple choices. and many possibilities waiting to happen. And then we can choose, pick and choose. This worked now. Let me try another one, another time. We can experiment knowingly, consciously, deliberately, and willingly. And that is how we can respond. One quick thing is, whenever we are mindful, we are being deliberate. We are being very conscious. That means we are using the higher center of the brain, which makes us truly human. And only humans have this capability to be mindful. And let us make use of that choice of being mindful in the most beneficial manner. And to just recap whatever I have said until now, it's all we are practicing being mindful is to be in the present moment. And how to be in the present moment is to be mindful. What is that being mindful? Mindfulness helps us create space between a very strong emotion and an action. And during that space, that time, and the whatever decision that we take in that space is what empowers us. That is what gives us the strength. And this is again one of the definitions that Ramesh also brought about when he defined what stress is. That space or that time between trigger and our action is our choice. That is where we can exercise our free will. That is where we can choose. And whenever we choose, even if it is a mistake, if we choose to make a mistake, we will learn from that. It will empower us later if we know we are making that mistake. But all that power and strength lies in that space. And being mindful gives that little bit extra time and that calmness and empathy and compassion to be able to choose the action that we want to take. And to be mindful is to learn to deal with both positive and negative experience in a much more calm manner. And so that we can make better decisions over a period of time. And when we pay attention to our thoughts and feelings, we can respond in a more clever way so that we don't hurt our own feelings to begin with, and also the feelings of others. Extremely important. Many a times, because whatever we have trained ourselves to be so successful in a certain way, we keep following the same thing because it has worked for us. Many times we won't even know we are hurting somebody else's feelings just by the way we are. Just practicing mindfulness, because I know I have heard from our own Yogakshema volunteers, if we just look at it as a tool, I will try and tell you, it will be boring after a certain while. Even if we tell, just do 5 minutes of mindful breathing, 10 minutes of mindful breathing, it is not going to be possible to do until and unless it is beyond our intellectual conviction. I will tell you, for most of us, we are not convinced yet. That is why we start and then we stop, because it becomes boring. To do that 5-minute mindfulness meditation, mindfulness breathing becomes boring. And we know we are there. Such things come about once we are intellectually convinced, such doubts won't occur, or such ideas won't come to our mind. And then I will tell you, after a while, if you're living this every moment, this is way after years and years and years of practice, true practice, then we don't even need to do that 5 minutes, but it takes a long time and lot of humility, lot of modesty, and to check ourselves. Are we hurting our own feelings? And are we hurting others' feelings? Am I able to change myself to work towards the cause? Am I holding on to principles my own way just so others work in a way to make it happen? If we can use such things as our own yardsticks. And then if we are kind of convinced, then we can stop for a while and then we will see. Then we will know we would have stagnated. And then again, start this 5 or 10 minute mindful breathing every day. Use it as a tool. And believing this is what I wanted for the rest of my life, not just for the career. This is what brings the true beauty of a person inside when we truly are mindful every moment. Try to be mindful, not being mindful. We have to just keep trying to be mindful. So as we create more emotional balance, we are less easily knocked down by our own emotions. But even if we are knocked down by the emotions, which we will, I will tell you, which we will be able to bounce back. A lot of us will be able to bounce back without any iota of hard feelings, without any iota of doubt, sadness, nothing of that sort. That will be the yardstick. So I'll just give you a very quick tool how we can start off by remembering this to stop. It's time to stop. It's just an acronym. So when we feel frustrated, when we are faced with challenges, all that means, and then if we are feeling anxious, angry, sad, or too elated, too happy also, all it means is we are not in touch with the now. I am not saying we should not be happy. Sometimes by having such great emotions, either happy or sadness, we tend to make mistakes, especially while taking decisions. So to calm our emotions to a neutral manner before taking decisions, that's what I mean by if you are too happy or too sad, try not to make decisions. Try to calm yourself down before making that decision. All it means is that we are not in touch with the present moment, here and now. So an easy way is stop at that moment, whatever you're doing. Take a momentary pause and then take a deep breath. I usually say 3 breaths. By starting with 3 breaths, we can get down to 1 breath and feeling that breath, because our breath is the bridge between our body and our mind. Literally, as soon as you focus on your breath, wherever the mind is elsewhere, it could be on Mars, it will bring us back down to the body. It makes us grounded. Breath is so important. And then observe, witness whatever is happening. It could be elation, it could be anger, it could be sadness. Do not react, but just acknowledge whatever that feeling is. Just acknowledging is enough at that moment. And then proceed. Having acquainted briefly with the here and now and here. Just that is enough for us to stop and then proceed. If this we can master, if we can do either 5 or 10 minutes of mindful breathing every day, sitting in a same place, at the same time, preferably in the same place, at the same time, just give yourself 5 minutes and do simple mindful breathing, and that will work wonders. Another one of my favorite sayings by Thich Nhat Hanh, so profound. He says, if you're truly present and know how to take care of the present moments as best as you can, you're doing your best for the future already. And we know how we need to take care of that present moment by being mindful. So if we can set our clocks and our watches all the time to the now, I think that will help us to be mindful. Thank you.